Okay, welcome. That's pretty loud. Welcome and thank you for being here today to our Steps to Success in Wellness Career Planning for Postdocs in Science. I'm Jill McCoska. I'm one of the PIs of the U54, and I'm here to actually say a few words about what we will be doing today and then to welcome and introduce our panelists. Welcome to the 2024 UMass Boston Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center Spring Symposium, which is titled as I just told you, okay? For the past 3 years, we've held a spring symposium focused on equity and inclusion in workforce development efforts. I have a script here, which I must read, so I'm gonna try to remember to look up every once in a while instead of just staring at this thing. This year, our symposium will focus on themes related to career decisions, work and wellness, and advanced graduate students and postdoctoral fellows are choosing their career paths. We know they must factor in not only their professional training and networks, but also their family obligations, finances, visa considerations, and their own personal wellness. We have asked our panelists to share their career journeys and discuss what factored into their decisions to pursue a career in their field, as well as how they may be working to shape the field of science for those coming behind them. Our hope is that the graduate students and postdocs in attendance here today will be able to draw from these inspiring journeys and learn more about the steps they can take to have a successful and well-rounded career in research and science. After we hear from our 5 panelists, we will open up the floor for a short Q&A to give online participants a chance to engage with our panelists. Page turn. Those of us who are here in person will then have an opportunity to participate in one of the 2 breakout sessions for more in-depth conversations about career decisions, workplace equity, and personal wellness with the panelists. We will then reconvene for a brief closing remarks and a networking hour to continue conversations and enjoy some light refreshments. Before introducing our panelists, I would like to thank the members of the working group that I sat on, who each spent many hours reflecting on and discussing these important ideas and topics and designing a meaningful and engaging event. So when I say your name, just kind of raise your hand so people can recognize you. Big thank you to Kathy Zeleny, there, Valerie Stone, Jim Gould, Carrie Wilkins-Yell, Paulo Gonzalo, Brianka Taylor, there, and Abby Shane. All right. So our panelists today are, in order, Dr. Jim Gould. He is the Director for Postdoctoral Affairs and the Program Director for Responsible Conduct of Research at Harvard Medical School. He's been implementing research, career readiness, and professional development programs and policies for trainees since 2011. He's spoken and published on career and professional development topics in a variety of forums locally and internationally, including his book, Making the Most of the Postdoc, which came out last September. Okay. Next is Dr. Kathryn Hall. She is the Deputy Commissioner for Population Health and Health Equity at the Boston Public Health Commission, the health department for the city of Boston. She came to this position after earning a PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics from Harvard University, then spent 10 years in biotech, returned to Harvard Medical School, joining the fellowship in integrative medicine at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and received a master's in public health from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. She is an assistant professor, part-time in medicine at Harvard Medical School, and associate molecular biologist in the Division of Preventive Medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital. How do you have time to do anything else? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Her academic research focuses on the placebo effect, and in particular, how the absence of placebo and presence of nocebo influences health equity. Okay. Next is Mr. Ryan Mudawar. Ryan Mudawar joined the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center in 2009 and currently serves as Vice President of Education and Workforce Programs. He oversees the development and implementation of the MLSC's Education and Workforce Investment Strategy and leads efforts that foster partnerships and collaboration with public, private, and nonprofit stakeholders. He manages programs and initiatives that focus on enhancing expanding and diversifying the life sciences talent pipeline. These most notably include the MLSC's largest and longest running program, the Internship Challenge, which has created more than 6,000 internships for college students with over 1,000 companies. The success of the program led to the creation of a high school apprenticeship program, as well as an internship program for students with data science skills. He also manages equipment and professional development grants for public middle and high schools and capital grants for post-secondary institutions. And I promise I will get my applications reviewed soon, okay? All right. Next is Dr. Yohannes Tesfaigzi. He is a professor of medicine in the Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine in the Department of Medicine at Mass General Brigham, Harvard Medical School. By training, he is a cell and molecular biologist who has 30 years of experience in airway epithelial cell biology and how airway cells protect the body from chronic diseases of the lung and other organs. Among his many accomplishments, he identified genetic variants that differentially affect mucus cell hyperplasia and reduce lung function, and his group elucidated the mechanisms underlying the selective removal of inflammation-induced hyperplastic mucus cells in airway epithelium, and that these mechanisms are deficient in patients with cystic fibrosis, chronic bronchitis, or asthmatic bronchitis. He's developed animal models of COPD and asthma that closely resemble the human disease and therefore have been useful for screening potential drugs for these diseases. And at the end of the table, Dr. Juliet Girard. She received her bachelor's degree from Harvard University in 2007 in biochemical sciences cum laude, and her PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology from the University of California, San Francisco in 2015. Her graduate work in the laboratory of Dr. David Morgan focused on the biochemistry of the cell division cycle control machinery and S. cerevisiae. She did her postdoctoral research in the laboratory of Dr. Utpal Banerjee at University of California, Los Angeles, and her postdoc research elucidated novel mechanisms that regulate immune cell development in Drosophila. As an IRA DCA-funded postdoctoral fellow, Dr. Girard received extensive training and experience in applying evidence-based practices in her teaching and mentorship of undergraduates at UCLA and Cal State LA. She started her laboratory as an assistant professor at the University of Massachusetts, Boston in January 2022. She is passionate about and deeply committed to teaching and mentoring students from diverse backgrounds and outreach to high school students. Thank you. All right. So now we will go in turn down the panelist table here and ask them to please spend a few minutes, 6 to 7 minutes, not that I'm going to time it or anything, but I am, okay, sharing your background and career journey. And I believe you did get some prompts on the types of things you might want to address, okay? So I'll just reel them off in case you don't have them in front of you, but I think they should be on that, hopefully. But I'll read them. What is your current position and what prior roles have you held? What training was needed to advance in your career? What are big moments or relevant transitions that helped you make your current career decision? What individuals or networks helped you along the way? Okay, and so we'll start with you, Dr. Gould.
That wasn't too disturbing. Hi, I'm Jim Gould, Director for Postdoctoral Affairs at Harvard Medical School. Recently promoted. Writing and publishing a book has been very instrumental in getting that promotion. I'd been asking for it for several years. And then I reminded my boss that, hey, my book is coming out in September. His eyes went wide and said, oh, we should do something about that. So being a part of the community is very important. Giving back to the community is very important. But I want to introduce myself as a husband to a brilliant wife, teacher, and administrator, and a father to another brilliant woman, young woman graduating high school in a few weeks. She has her own book she's published. So I'm very proud of being a husband and a father. We're talking about success and wellness and life and work. I think that's very important to acknowledge. I wouldn't be where I am today without the support of my wife and my child. I wouldn't even be in Boston. I wouldn't be at Harvard Medical School. I'd probably still be in graduate school on my 20th year of PhD. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that they were major motivators in my success, as well as my current wellness and stature. I am very honored and quite humbled to be on this panel. And I think being on the committee, the planning committee was helpful and instrumental in getting me on this panel. But I got my PhD at the University of Louisville in Kentucky, bachelor's degree in Clarion University of Pennsylvania, small public university in northwestern Pennsylvania, about an hour from where I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. But I spent time growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, so that's why I went back to Louisville for graduate school. I did two postdocs actually, at the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, now called Frederick National Labs, much more fancy than when I was there. But there's success in wellness, but there's also tons of failures along the way that help me learn things and then move forward. In graduate school, I failed my qualifier. It was, humbling, but also motivating. And then my first postdoc didn't work out and I was not renewed. So I had to find a second postdoc. And that lab actually was a much better place for me to be who I was, but also the research that I was interested in, and cancer metabolism and all of that. But one of the things that helped me in my training for my current position, and maybe hopefully moving forward, is I've been at HMS now for 13 years, recently promoted, but 13 years in the same position. I need to take my own advice as an advisor and say, you need to look for bigger and better things possibly. But I learned during the PhD and my undergrad and my postdoc, the scientific method. And I was able to learn and apply that to everything that I encountered, not just science or research. And that's something that I espouse to others. I was also in high school and throughout college, I worked at Kmart, and that really helped me with my people skills, my customer service skills, my being able to think and speak on my feet, helping people. The idea that my career has moved from doing research to actually helping others figure out their research and their next stage of goals. I say yes, or used to say yes to almost everything. And that helped me build a foundation, helped me build a reputation. But now I have to be much more strategic. And we can talk about being strategically saying yes or strategically saying no. But in this job and in the work that I do, I had to learn how to talk and communicate and give evidence to and show data using my science background to a multitude of stakeholders. Not just with postdocs, not just with peers, but now faculty, department chairs, deans, provosts, and even presidents. A lot of the things that helped me in my growth and transition into where I am now was actually realizing I needed help and learning how to ask for help, but also just doing the thing that I needed done until others came with me. And then once that was established, being able to share that. And more specifically, when I was a postdoc at the NIH, I took full advantage of the time I was there. Not necessarily research-wise, because I told you I wasn't renewed my first postdoc, but I took advantage of every training opportunity they had. I took advantage of the career service office and advantage of being a part of the postdoc association there and creating, even way back in undergrad, being on the biotech club and the medical careers club, and moving into graduate school, forming the biochemistry and molecular biology department student organization, which is still flourishing 15 or 17 years later. Again, moving and working with and eventually leading the postdoc association and making contacts there, realizing at that moment when I was leading the postdoc association, realizing that I could do that for a career. Because up until that point, I didn't know what I was going to do next. And the office that I currently run at Harvard Medical School wasn't in existence when I was a graduate school or postdoc. So it was very early in the office's existence when I moved directly from postdoc to running a postdoc office. Because as a postdoc, I was doing much the same stuff. And I've since grown in portfolio and offerings and all of that. But I think being a people person, always having been a people person, but surrounding myself with people who complemented my skills, not gave me compliments, but complemented my skills, but also filled in the gaps where I had gaps and missing pieces in my training and expertise. And just using that platform to bring others into the fold has been enormously helpful for me and hopefully for others. And I think that's enough of an introduction.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As I'm sitting here, I'm remembering the times when I was sitting where you're sitting and kind of what came out of those various occasions. And one of them I'm remembering is sitting here and hearing a physician who was doing a fellowship at Children's Hospital that she had done photography as an undergrad. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I think, I would then many years later go to Emerson College and do a master's in documentary film. But it's really interesting because the things that spark you either positive or negatively can really tell you something about yourself. Many years later when I was at Millennium, and I'm going to hop about a little bit, but after grad school, I went into pharma. And one of the things I remember is a good friend of mine got into Harvard School of Public Health to do an MPH. And I was so excited for her, so proud for her. And then she came back a couple weeks later and told me she wasn't going to go. And I was so angry at her. I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to go? Like, this is amazing. And she explained to me why she would. And I honestly, I didn't talk to her. Like, I can't even believe I did this looking back, but I didn't talk to her for the longest while. I'm like, why would you not go? Only to realize that I wanted to go. And many years later, I would go on and do an MPH at Harvard School of Public Health, which I utterly enjoyed and has really been transformational in my life. But another thing is every time, if I look at all the jobs I got early on in my career, they all came from people I met at occasions like this. The person next to me, I remember being at one event and talking to somebody about, it was the job I would get would be at Millennium Pharmaceuticals. And I was talking about, by the time genomics was really kind of being ramped up, scaled up to large scale genomics, and just being really interested and passionate, and that was the person I reached out to and I got the job at Millennium. So to take you back a little bit, I went to grad school at Harvard Medical School, and my postdoc and graduate school was spent in the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And I always wanted to go to pharma because I grew up in Jamaica where we don't have a lot of jobs and we don't have a lot of industry at the time and to some extent now. And I really felt it was important to give people jobs. Like that was in my head all the time. When you go to work, you should enjoy your work. It should be a creative place where you have really great, strong social cohesions and it's really meaningful and you get money that you can put into your, to buy food and, provide for your children and your family. So I wanted to go back and start a pharma company in Jamaica, but, there's a lot of corruption in my country. And as I kind of got closer to that, I was like, maybe not. So I after my postdoc, I went into pharma and really, I think, had a fabulous time. I learned so much and I had the opportunity to work in almost every aspect of drug development from beginning to the end. And it's interesting because a lot of times when you're in grad school, people tell you have to specialize in one thing. And if you don't end up doing it, some people cannot understand who you are. I mean, I think if you want to specialize in one thing, that is amazing and great. And if you want to do a lot of different things, like I did, you have to find your tribe because some people will not understand. And I remember many years later when my fellowship director said to me that nobody's going to understand who you are. Nobody is going to get it. Like you can't put all this stuff on your CV. And at one of these events, I sat beside somebody, a recruiter for CEOs. And I said, what do you look for in a CEO? And she said, I look for somebody who's done a lot of different things. I was like, well, there it is. That, I'm a generalist. I like to really immerse myself in a lot of different things. So I was in pharma, learning how to manufacture drugs, almost every single aspect of it. And then at some point, when our drugs started to fail in clinical trials, and I started to I had a lot of hand pain, two things very interesting happened to me. One is I went from, specialist to specialist to specialist. And by the time I got to the codeine every morning or every night, just to kind of keep my hands moving, and just felt very sluggish and nauseated, I thought there must be another way. And my good friend kept saying, go get acupuncture. And I'm like, I'm not going for acupuncture. That's crazy. Like needles, what are they going to do? But finally I went and got acupuncture. And after 2 years of pain, one acupuncture session healed my pain. Like I couldn't believe it. Like what was that, a placebo? Was that acupuncture? What is this thing? So I started to do research on acupuncture and eventually would go back to research after my time as a documentary filmmaker to study placebos. And I wrote a book on placebos. And that really is kind of how I got really interested in placebos, because not only are clinical trials failing now at a really alarming rate to beat placebos, but they're this powerful thing that we really, as I think physicians and clinicians, want to ignore, but can take advantage because they're so transformational in the healing and health of people. And I think that sadly in the mechanism that's used by your brain to produce a placebo effect is the same mechanism that's being hacked every day by certain people in our country to kind of brainwash you and make you believe certain things. So I use that every day in my job. We're going to get to this as the Deputy Commissioner for Population Health and Health Equity at the Boston Public Health Commission. That's the health department for Boston. And I went there because during COVID, I sat around thinking about placebos and I thought, maybe this is not a good time to be thinking about placebos. Maybe this is a good time to be actually doing something to help people, because there's so many people dying. And the death was disproportionate and alarmingly affecting people of color. A good colleague of mine was joining as Commissioner of Public Health at Boston Public Health Commission. So I said, hey, if you need any help, I'm happy to volunteer. And she said, actually, I need some help. Do you want to come over here? And so I've been there for 2.5 years. I have to say that it was amazing. Maybe we'll get to what we do every day. It was, I could go on and on about, standing up the wastewater program in Boston, or doing surveillance, doing so many different things that we did. And when you get to a certain position, you're going to actually not necessarily have to go look for the job, but the headhunters will start to call you. They've been calling me for several years, and I've been like, no, no, no. And then they finally called me with the opportunity to be Senior Vice President at the New York Academy of Medicine for research. I took the position. So at the end of this month, I'm going to be heading to New York for another adventure. And let me tell you, New York's a big city. I'll stop there.
Mr. Mudawar.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Vice President of Education and Workforce Programs at the Mass Life Sciences Center. I'm incredibly honored to be amongst these esteemed panelists. I feel like I kind of don't belong here. I'm the oddball, but so bear with me. I do not have a PhD. I do not have a science background, but I hope that my perspective can benefit you in some way. I'm just so thrilled to be back here on campus at UMass Boston. I feel like I come here a few times a year. Thank you so much for having me. Our partnership with UMass Boston goes back over a decade, over $10 million in investment that we've made right here on campus to support the infrastructure and the lab equipment that you used here. And I'm incredibly thrilled that we have talent like Dr. Jill McCosker here. One of our first grants was actually a grant to help attract her to Massachusetts. So it's great to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for serving as one of our grant reviewers as well, as she alluded to earlier. We cannot do the great work that we do without the support of our partners all across the state. And UMass Boston has been an incredible partner for us, as has Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center as well. We've been supporting the CURE program, which some of you might be familiar with, to support underrepresented high school students with internship experiences. So these partnerships go way back, and it's really what keeps me so energized and enthusiastic and excited about the role that I'm in and the work that our organization is doing. This is my 16th year at the Mass Life Sciences Center, and I get asked a lot, especially, just recently, how are you still there? How are you still in the same role? This isn't normal anymore, right? People don't stick around in the same jobs for this long period of time. And I have to say, it's because every single day I'm inspired by something. I feel like the work that we're doing is so rewarding, and I'm so fortunate that I'm able to work in a capacity where we're having on such a daily impact. You can see how you're changing people's lives, and so the work that I do specifically is kind of what makes it so rewarding is I oversee the state's workforce development initiatives as it relates specifically to the life sciences industry, and I'll touch on that a little bit more later. But we're also advancing human health. So you see that impact on both sides. You're helping people get jobs. You're helping people gain entry into this robust, growing, thriving workforce, which is changing their lives because they're on a career path that is, is going to be, they're going to be very successful in the life sciences here in Massachusetts. And then you're also helping. I mean, every day you're seeing the headlines about the advances that this industry is making. We don't have to look too far back. I mean, all of the COVID vaccines and Massachusetts has really led the nation, led the world when it comes to life sciences and healthcare. And that's not by accident. Right. So 15 years ago, 16 years ago now, Governor Patrick had this bold vision that Massachusetts could lead the world. This could be the global epicenter for life sciences. We had all the ingredients, and it was a big investment. What's called the Life Sciences Initiative, which was $1 billion over 10 years at the time. We were subsequently reauthorized for another 5 years by the following administration, and hopefully next month we'll be reauthorized for another 5 years and another 10 years, another $1 billion. So this is an extraordinary commitment. Nothing like this exists anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. This level of investment from the state, public taxpayer dollars that we are strategically investing to support the growth of this industry, which isn't about profits, it's about patience, and it's about supporting cutting edge research, while at the same time, and this is why my role exists, helping people get good quality, meaningful jobs, and with a lot of career potential. So, I mean, just this morning I was across the street at Southline, and you might have heard of Bioversity, which is a new nonprofit that runs a short-term training program, 8 to 10 weeks, in biotech for mostly adults. Their commencement speaker was 60-something years old. A student that just graduated, just got this certificate in biotech and is already interviewing for jobs in the industry. There are people that are changing their careers, changing their lives, going into life sciences because of these programs that the state is investing in and supporting. And we're truly leading the way in that regard. So it's incredibly rewarding for me. It's what keeps me doing this every single day, every single year. I started at this organization at the most entry level. And let me just spend a couple minutes, if I still have time, talking about my journey, because that's why we're here. And I know my journey is not going to be like the others or like yours. So it's a little bit different, but I hope you can gain something from it. I came to the Boston area for grad school. I was studying international relations, specifically part of a government program at Suffolk University. And I was really interested at the time in diplomacy and international affairs and things of that nature. But it was the recession, the 2008 recession. And so it was a very, very, very challenging time. When I graduated, everyone was looking for jobs. Everyone was getting laid off. There was nothing available, especially for somebody with my skills. And it was a really kind of just a wake up call that, oops, I probably majored in the wrong thing. But it was also an opportunity for me to just kind of do a reset and say, well, I'm not gonna have the dream job that I thought I was gonna have, but I needed to work, right? So the only thing I could really find was temporary job opportunities. So working through a staffing agency, I literally got an opportunity to jump from job to job to job to job to job, doing very, very mundane, basic things like data entry, working into various nonprofit organizations. The pay was very low, but I stuck with it because I said, I have to build a network. I have to get to know people. I have to meet people. And I was so fortunate that after my 5th kind of opportunity, and I was literally just archiving old documents from like literally in boxes and old folders and bringing things up from the basement for people. It was not something that I ever thought I was going to do with a master's degree. And but I did it every single day with a smile on my face. I was incredibly efficient, and I showed everyone like I'm going to do this really, really well, and I'm going to do it with a really positive attitude. And and people saw that. And I was so lucky that it was, again, 2008, that's when the bill passed. My supervisor at the time gets a phone call from who would become the vice president of education and workforce programs, my predecessor, who said, we're starting this new organization. We don't even have an office. We don't have a job description, but I need to hire a program associate to stand up a new program. And I need to do this right away. Is there anyone that you know that's looking for work that would be a good fit? And I was literally sitting like right across the room from her while she's on the phone. And she said, yeah, I'm looking at him right now. And so I immediately, she sent me, she said like, he's on a temp, position. We're about to, unfortunately, we're making up stuff for him to do to keep him longer. But he needs to find a better opportunity. So she emailed the resume. I went in for the interview 2 days later, and they hired me after just 2 rounds of quick interviews. And I was like, okay, what did I get myself into? I don't even know what life sciences is. And so we were building something from new. We were essentially a startup, very bootstrapped. We were all scattered all over different locations throughout the city. But I was given this opportunity to create what would become the world's largest and first of its kind internship program. And it was so inspiring because I was in this moment feeling like I have so many peers who are looking for work. I couldn't even find an internship. I eventually found one. It wasn't quite what I wanted, but it was so hard, and I could see firsthand how people were struggling to find work. And here I am now, I get to give back. I now have a job where I can help other people get jobs. And so that's just kept me so motivated. And I'm just so thrilled that we're over 7,000 internships now. I need to my bio. And it's just been an incredible life-changing experience for so many of the students we've served. Many of them are UMass Boston students. And I will give a plug. That data science program you mentioned is specifically aimed at postdocs and grad students. So if you're into computational biology, bioinformatics, any of that, apply to our program. It's a rolling program, no deadline. And these are really good, solid experiences that will get you a foot in the door in this industry. So I know I took up too much time. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Dr. Tesfaigzi.
Well, that's amazing. Nobody can predict, I think, what happens next. And this is exactly the experience that I had as well. I mean, to make a long story short, I've never really applied for a job. That's the way things are. I've never really gone and said, yeah, I need to do something. So, but the one thing that is very important is really, I think, to do the things that one is interested in a very proper way. In other words, you're interested in something, you just do that. I was lucky that I was always interested in biology. So even when I was a kid, I was very interested in animals, I was interested in plants, I was interested in cells. I just was kind of fascinated, even now when I walk around and I look at leaves coming out and the flowers and stuff. I'm just fascinated every day. And so this was the way I was. Other people are not necessarily that way, but again, it's very hard to predict that one would do a job that one would dream about, right? I mean, I grew up in Africa, in Ethiopia. I was 14. I had to go to Germany without my parents. So things happened in a way that I could not predict. But then I went into a school in Germany. I finished my undergrad and graduate school. And then I went to, and I didn't know what to do. Literally, that time, it was such a difficult decision to know, do I go back to, and every time I was thinking, I'd go back to Ethiopia and do something. But then there was war. I didn't know what to do. I said, yeah, well, what are my colleagues doing? Well, they have always done a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in the US from Germany. So I said, well, it'll give me 2 years to think about what I'm going to do. So why don't I just do what they do too? So I ended up at the University of California, Davis, and my supervisor, Don Carlson, really was a very, somebody who actually kind of impressed me a lot and gave me the opportunity to understand the airway cells. And that's really what's fascinated me, and it's still fascinating me to this day. So what happened is I did the postdoctoral fellowship. He was showing me how research is going on here in the US, how you get NIH funding, how do you do things. And well, I didn't, learn everything at once. It took a while for sure. But one day someone called me, as all my, places, from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was in California. I didn't even know where Albuquerque is, to tell you the truth. So he said, yeah, why don't you come and visit us? You can look at, who we are and so on. I said, yeah, sure. I'd like to come and talk to you guys. I didn't even think of a job at that time. So I said, yeah, well, I'll go there, and we discussed. And at that time, in fact, it was so difficult to get funding. Unfortunately, a lot of very talented people were going away from life sciences. I mean, going into computers, whatnot. I mean, it was a very difficult time. I couldn't predict where I'm ending. And this institute was, a small institution, Loveless Respiratory Research, focused on the lung research. They told me, well, we'd like to keep you here. I said, what for? I mean, and they said, yeah, you could do your research here, whatever you want. Really hard to predict something like this, right? I mean, you just do what you like to do and do it very well, and something happens. So, I was in Albuquerque for a long time. Kids grew up there, and there are two things. I mean, one is, of course, as I said, my postdoctoral advisor, who has really impressed me in many ways. But the other thing is what Jim mentioned as well. My wife and my kids. I mean, I learned so much when my kids were growing up. That's really when I learned how life is, what life is. I mean, you gotta enjoy life. I mean, you gotta be, every day is very precious, right? And so, and the same thing happened again. I mean, I was enjoying my research. Difficulties happen, right? I mean, it's not easy to get grants, never will be. It's very competitive. But if you like doing it, you just don't even think of the difficulties. You say, well, I will do it somehow. Somehow it may work, may not work. But if you put so much effort into anything, and if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. I think myself. I mean, it's really very, but the interest and the drive has to be there. So two things really fascinate me every day when I go to work today. And later on, I'm a professor of medicine at Brigham, and I joined Harvard Medical School in 2019. This was not because somebody called me. We just talked, and they said, yeah, look, I mean, why don't you come over here to Boston? Boston? Why should I go to Boston? What's going on? And so many issues with, you're thinking about moving, having to, establish a new laboratory and whatnot, and all that was very difficult. And they asked me, so, what would you be interested in? I told them, well, if this and this happened, then maybe I would be considering it. And you cannot imagine, I mean, literally, it was such that I could say no. I couldn't say no, in other words. I had to say, wow, this is amazing. Again, I have an opportunity to do the things that I like to do, what I'm passionate about. In other words, to train young scientists that are from a variety of backgrounds, underrepresented minorities. There are low and middle income country people that I can talk to every day and do the science at the same time with, because I'm passionate about that. And, you know, and sometimes one thinks about, yeah, all these, and I think backwards sometimes and say, wow, I had some, you know, kind of frustrating events when things didn't work out. Say you put something, you try something and it didn't work out, and you have sleepless nights. But, you know, as a whole, when you kind of step back and look at it, you say, it's a fascinating life. I mean, it's very hard, and I don't know whether anyone can predict what happens tomorrow. I don't, certainly I cannot. But the thing of just kind of focusing on that day and really doing the best to help others and to do what you're actually called for, I think is a very major issue. So lastly, I just wanted to say one other thing. I mean, the skills that are important, you know, and that was one of the questions, and I thought about that. You know, one of the things that really is important is really the interaction with other people. So if you interact with everyone, you really gain a lot. In fact, when I think about it, the most productive, the most interesting, most exciting time I have in my work or in my life is really when I interact with people of multiple cultures, different cultures. It's just so amazing because the productivity, the thinking, the interaction is just very hard to replicate. The other thing that is, I think, very important is also this interaction with people who you do not necessarily know. In our case, you know, multidisciplinary type of work, people who do a completely different stuff that I do, what I do. So there are people who are nurses, who are bioinformaticians, statisticians, that I interact with and try to learn their language, because the communication is so different between what my training is and their training is. But if we do that, there are just things that happen that I never dreamt of. So these are the kind of things that carried me through my life, actually.
Thank you. Dr. Girard.
So I feel very intimidated by being the closer of this because, you know, I feel like probably more similar to those trainees sitting in the audience than most of the panelists here in that, you know, I'm only a few years out of my postdoc. And so I can speak a little bit more as someone who's kind of still on the journey about what has motivated me up until now. But I should say, first of all, that so I'm an assistant professor here at UMass Boston. And I started just over 2 years ago. And so I want to sort of talk a little bit about what brought me here, which is really love. You know, I am passionate about teaching students, I'm passionate about research. And I think, you know, for me, one of the major motivators in my life has been I love to learn. And so I'm like a lifelong learner, and I love research because it allows me to keep learning all the time. And I love teaching because I feel that I can learn constantly as a teacher and become better and improve and learn from my students. And so, you know, I wanted to find a job. I've always loved research. I've always loved teaching. I wanted to find a job that really combined those passions that I have. And that's why I'm here, because of those passions. In terms of my journey and sort of the transitions that I made throughout, I want to say that, you know, I sort of would describe it as the longest, shortest path. You know, I'm not somebody who like did something like completely different, like documentary filmmaking or anything. I've always been passionate from childhood about biology and life sciences in general. And I knew that I loved it from very early childhood. So everything I've done up until this point has been to pursue those two major passions. So in that way, it's a very short path in that I've never kind of had a major branch off point where I tried something completely different. But it's a long path in that, for me, I'm coming from, so I grew up in New Jersey. I am a first generation college student and I come from a low income background, and I'm an underrepresented minority. So for me, like to just get, childhood me, imagining, adult me, it's just, it does not compute, I guess. Like I didn't know that the career path that I'm currently on existed when I was young. And so to get where I am today, honestly, obviously it's taken a lot of hard work and a lot of training on my part, but then also it's taken a lot of input from mentors. So I really want to highlight how important mentors have been throughout my path, because it's been a long journey in the sense that, I didn't even know this career path existed, and it's taken a lot to kind of educate me to get to that point where I am right now. And so I want to say that, like, for me, I started doing research, in high school, actually, which is kind of unusual, I realize. But I knew I was passionate about life sciences, and I wanted to learn more about what are the career paths that existed. And I was very fortunate to have excellent teachers who were incredible mentors to me. So one of my teachers, Michael Corcoran, actually introduced me to these summer internships that I could apply for, to do research at universities. And I didn't even know this was a thing, that people did research in universities. And that's one of the major kind of career paths for scientists. And through those internships, so I grew up in New Jersey. So I did my first internship at our local Rutgers, which is the State School of New Jersey. And then I also did an internship at Cornell. And through those internships, I really got to know what it meant to do academic research. And I really created relationships with two amazing scientists, and mentors, Dr. Daphna Havkin-Frankel and Dr. Susan McCooch, which they sort of took me under their wing and really showed me the path, and taught me about applying to universities. And that was a big part of what helped me succeed in that stage. Because, as I said, I was first generation college student, didn't know about how to apply to colleges. I didn't know a lot about the process of choosing a college, applying for financial aid, all those things. And so from there, I really wanted to get involved in research in college. I've again found an amazing mentor, Dr. Richard Losick, who really showed me sort of the path, and helped me figure out a lab to work in. And I really enjoyed that, my research as an undergraduate. From there, I knew I wanted to apply to graduate programs. And I actually kind of wanted something different. So I did my undergraduate at Harvard. For me, the sort of the the academic culture at Harvard was not ideal. I didn't love it, in a lot of ways. Even though I loved my research experience there, and I love a lot of the professors that I met, I just thought that the academic culture was a little bit intense, is what I will call it. So I decided to go to graduate school across the country at University of California, San Francisco. And I felt like the academic culture there was a little bit more in line with what I was looking for. And so, I also had amazing mentors. I tried to highlight in my biography some of the mentors that played a big role in my development. And, so one of the things that I knew that I really liked, is I knew I liked research. I knew I liked teaching. I wasn't actually 100% sure, actually prior to starting graduate school, what level I wanted to do that in. I thought, okay, well, one possibility is I could work in academic, university level research. Another possibility was I had my mentor from high school who helped me mentor me in research. And I was like, maybe I could be that sort of equivalent position in high school. So I actually did take one not quite deep detour exactly, in the sense that I worked as a assistant teacher and in the public schools of my hometown, which is Jersey City, New Jersey. And there I was mentoring students in research and also teaching. So I still sort of, it's not quite a detour in that I was still teaching and doing research, but it was at the high school level. From that experience, I think I realized I didn't want to be a high school teacher. Not that I didn't enjoy the experience, but it just, I think at the level at which I was doing the research and doing the teaching, was not quite what I wanted. So I knew I wanted to do kind of more university level, undergraduate level research and teaching. So for, you know, and I didn't get a whole lot of that at UCSF because we don't have undergraduates, unfortunately. So I did have a little bit of mentorship with some undergrads for summer programs, but I knew I wanted to do something different for my postdoc. So I actually sought out explicitly a postdoc where I would get to do both teaching and research of undergraduates. And so I applied to this ERACTA program. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but it's an NIH-sponsored program that's housed at universities all across the country. And what's great about the ERACTA program is you get training in teaching and in mentorship, and then you also teach at a partner institution. So I taught at Cal State LA, and you really get sort of the little taste of what it's like to be a faculty member with the ERACTA program, which I found very helpful. And the other thing about the ERACTA program that was really nice is that, you know, the directors of the ERACTA program sort of became excellent mentors to me as well. In addition to my postdoctoral advisor, I had 2 additional faculty mentors who were incredibly helpful, especially for my job transition postdoc. So for applying to faculty positions, you know, they read through all of my job materials, gave me really excellent feedback. You know, I even did my kind of practice chalk talk with them. And, you know, that was incredibly helpful. So, you know, both Claudio Villanueva and Mike Carey were 2 of the people that really made a difference for me as my, you know, kind of surrogate mentors through the ERACTA program. And so, yeah, and then I applied to jobs and was looking for a university that really valued both teaching and research. And so for me, you know, I was actually quite lucky because Claudio Villanueva, the ERACTA director, actually knew Adan Colon Carmona from UMass Boston, who had reached out to him and asked if there was anybody at UCLA who was interested potentially in the position, a faculty position at UMass Boston. And I looked at the job ad and I said, that's the perfect fit. It's like literally just like I had read a lot of job ads and there were no job ads that like jumped off the page to me as much as this one. And so I reached out to Adan and I spoke to several faculty members here at UMass Boston. And I realized that this was like the perfect fit for me. And honestly, I don't think there was any other school that I interviewed at or, you know, had experienced that was as good a fit. So, you know, that it was a very clear choice. And, you know, I'm 2 years in now and I'm enjoying the position that I'm in and I'm really enjoying interacting with UMass Boston students. It's a great place to be. So yeah, and that's been my journey. So thank you all for.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been a great panel, a tremendous panel. I feel like I could probably put together a motivational speaking tour with everybody here, and probably a lot of people would come to it. We do have a couple of minutes. We are a little bit behind, but not too bad. Let me just let you know what's happening next. We will take a little break, and then after that, we will start the breakout sessions. At the sessions, the 4 PIs of the U54 will be divided up between the 2 tables, as will the working group that put this together. And then our panelists will be at the tables as follows. For session A, which is, no, I can't point to it because it's over there. Session A, which is equity and inclusion at work, Mr. Mudawar and Doctors Tesfaigzi and Girard will be at that table. And session B, work and personal wellness, Doctors Gould and Hall will be at that table. Okay, and I would like either Brianka or Abby to come up here for a minute so that I make sure I'm doing this correctly. And to see how long of a break we can take since we're kind of on time. And if we should do questions.
I think we should.
Do some questions?
Yeah.
Okay, for a few minutes. Okay, let's open it up for a few questions, but since we do have time. Any questions? Yeah, Dr. Stone.
Icebreaker question, since, you know, I'm on the planning committee, but I think one of the key things we wanted the panelists to help us share with grad students and postdocs is how do you decide whether to take an academic position or a position in industry, or a position in government? Like, what are the things that, kind of characterize each of those types of jobs? And how do you weigh those factors in making a decision? Obviously, Dr. Girard has made this decision recently, so she might be a good person. And then I know Dr. Hall has been in industry and might be able to inform that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for me, part of the decision was based mostly on, again, because I was very passionate about teaching. I think that in industry, of course, you have the ability to mentor people, but it's not the same in that you can mentor people, but you can't do that teaching level. So for me, it was just, it didn't quite, industry doesn't quite have exactly what I was looking for. But I have lots of friends and, family members. My husband works in industry, and I've seen that it's very rewarding in a different way, I would say. And so, I mean, I think for my husband, for example, like he is somebody who, we did our PhDs together. But he is somebody who I think likes to have his hand in something that has like a little bit more direct application. And for me, I think I'm a little bit more motivated by like the basics of like, I am really trying to answer this question in the really mechanistic way. There, it's more applied. So I think it was for me, what is the thing that's most rewarding to me personally, and I think it's a little bit more teaching, and then also being able to have my hands in the very basic kind of questions of biology.
I remember when I was in doing my postdoc, somebody said the postdoc ends when you get the job, and it's kind of true, right? That you can only, I think, I'm a person that I learn by doing, and so I think don't perseverate on the choice too much. Do them all, right? Try each one. The key thing though is the currency is different in each of these organizations, right? So the currency in academics is grants and papers. The currency in pharma is your track record. What did you accomplish in your network? And the currency in government is really who you know, right? Also your network. Actually, the currency in all of them is your network. I guess that's the exchange rate. So I really believe that, always be talking to people, always be looking for when the door knocks, like, you could have not taken some of those door knocks that you got, but they came knocking and you went and you looked. So I think always keeping your eye out for when the opportunity strikes. And, don't be afraid to take a risk, but don't burn any bridges behind you when you do it.
That's a great one.
Yeah, please.
My question is to everyone, but Dr. Hall, since you have such a wide portfolio, like, I know you've switched around a lot. Was there something you did not like doing from all the stuff you have done? And also, like, how long did it take for you to decide that you don't like it? Because for me, I think making the decision is the hard part. Once I have the decision made, I just go along. But like just understanding if I'm not liking something, I don't know, how long should you give it a go?
That's a great question. I haven't changed things because I didn't like them. And I've done them for a very long time. So I was in pharma for about 15 years. In government, I've lasted almost 3 years. I wouldn't say I don't love it. I really like going around the city of Boston and seeing that we're making a difference. Literally, like I ran into an academic colleague and they're like, do you guys really make a difference? And I was like, well, during COVID, we got vaccines out to people. During COVID, we made sure that people were doing masking. During COVID, we made sure that people had those antigen tests, We went, door to door knocking, asking, what people needed. Like, we really make a difference every day. And it's really a compelling experience. It kind of can burn you out, but that's not why I'm leaving. I'm leaving because I got another opportunity that's super fascinating and looks like it, will be really exciting. So I think it might be time to make a change when I do think in pharma after a while, like it just got to be very frustrating that our drugs were not moving forward. They couldn't beat the placebo response. And I felt like even the drugs that we were making were not reaching people who needed them because of health inequities. And at that point, you have to say, is there anything more I can do about this problem? I can't do much more here. Let me try it from the other end. And I literally, like when I did my documentary film program, I put a camera on my back. I became like a one-woman show. I did the audio, I did the video, I did the editing, I did the interviewing, and I learned like the documentary I made was about HIV, talking to people who had HIV. Were they getting the treatments? Why weren't they getting the treatments? What do they know about the treatments? So it wasn't so much that I was leaving something, that I saw another thing that I really felt I needed to do.
If I may add that, I really like that advice. Sorry, I didn't want to. So that's a lot of some of the advice that I give is making sure that no matter what you're doing, you're moving towards something, you're moving forward towards something, you're not running away from certain things. But you can certainly identify aspects of the job that I have or the job that you might want that like, oh, that's not really what I want to be doing. I want to be doing this. So think about it in a way of what is a way to lean into your strengths and what are areas of growth and stretching what you have and where you're likely to go. So thinking about it in that way, you're not running from something, you're not avoiding anything, but you're really leaning into your strengths. And that really takes a lot of moments of light bulb moments for self-reflection, but also moments of just deep reflection and maybe even self-assessment of skills, interests, and values. It's really sort of that level of just thinking, what do I like to do? And a lot of the stuff that I have done, I've followed my interests while also being able to have a job that pays. I got to pay my bills, I got to feed myself and take care of my family. What allows me to do that while also allowing me to follow my interests, continue to grow, build a network and build a reputation, and then looking what else can I be doing? What's an area that I haven't moved into yet? Or what's the next step either for this type of career path or what interests me now? Because again, after 13 years in this job, there's still a lot of stuff that I enjoy, but I'm like, it's kind of mundane every day, but there are big picture things that I'm excited about. What can I do next step that would be a bit more exciting sort of every day? So think about it that way.
Completely agree. I mean, that is really a very important point to always think about what comes next. But at the same time, to give you an example, the interaction with people, I think, is very important. So it's never something that you ignore when, my example is this. When I was in Germany, I didn't know what's going to happen. I mean, I just have no clue where I'm going to be ending up. And one of the possibilities was to work into international organizations, United Nations, FAO, and so on. And I did apply. But at the same time, I did talk to people who are working there just to find out what do they actually do? What's going on in those organizations? In industry, I had the same thing. I had some connections, quite a lot of connections to just find out how do people live there? And that actually kind of gives you an idea whether that's something for you or not. I mean, you really understand how the whole thing works, and if that excites you, that's the perfect thing to do. If that does not, then you really have to say, well, I better wait. That's really a question maybe to an answer to the question that we heard. It's not necessarily such that you have to make a decision right away, but it's good to have interactions and learn about other organizations and how things work there.
Can I just add one? When I was in pharma, I wanted to come back, and I did the film thing. I wanted to come back, and to come back, I had to do a postdoc again because I'd done a postdoc before. And that was a really tough thing to do because I had been an associate director and made, really great money in pharma. So now I had to not only take a position cut, but a salary cut. And that was very humbling. And I worked with one of the most awful PIs you can imagine. And this PI wanted creativity on demand. And this PI had about 5 people working in her lab that were people from overseas that had like visa issues. So there, she was kind of like really holding it. It was a bad situation. And she called, she called us in, this is not even funny, but she called us, now I can look back and laugh into the, you know, on the whiteboard. And she said to me, I want you to tell me how to solve this problem. And I'm the kind of person who, I love a challenge, right? So and I like to draw on a whiteboard and think, and it does, I'm just like, it's not like do this. It's like you got to kind of work your way to it, right? You think, you brainstorm. And so I started to kind of like walk through the problem and just stop drawing on the board. I want you to tell me how to solve this problem. And and I realized that at that point, maybe it was time to move on. So I'm not saying you just stay in a bad situation. I have to tell you, I had done the research on the project that we had, and I had written up the paper, and she didn't agree with the way that I had done the analysis. And you could just really quickly, you can categorize variables, or you can analyze them as continuous variables. And I felt you had more power using placebo response as a continuous variable, and she thought we should categorize it. It's a fundamental difference, but you know, not a big deal. But she's really angry at it. And so she went around and told people that, you know, she rewrote the paper, sent it around to our collaborators. It was a very bad situation. And I said, and I explained them my rationale. She explained her rationale. They went with mine. That paper has been cited 250 times. It is one of the like key important papers in our area of research. So I had to stand up for myself, and I had to stay in a very bad situation to get through the point where I didn't burn that bridge. But it took, you know, it was not a nice, pleasant place to be. I'm not encouraging you to stay in a place where you don't think it's right, but leave on your own terms. Leave with, you know, with your integrity intact, and get out of there.
Yeah, hopefully retired by now, yeah? Okay, I don't know, you have one more, Adam, you're gonna be the last one.
You all spoke about relationships through mentorship, through interactions with bosses that you've had and so forth. And I'm just curious as to each of you or some of you could speak on your, as you're progressing through your careers, the types of being able to identify the good relationships versus those bad relationships, and being able to navigate the relationship building that takes place at grad school, at postdoc. So how did you acquire some of these skills as you're navigating through your career? The relationship building is like the soft skill that we're not trained to do, but yet it's so important, it seems like.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a great question. It is tricky, right? I think I really appreciated Kathryn's point about mentors, and sometimes you're in a situation where you and your mentor do not see eye to eye. And I would say that honestly, even if your mentor isn't like somebody who's taking advantage of you, or someone who's you know, you're having negative interactions with, even so, you won't always see eye to eye, and it is important to cultivate a way to kind of either, you know, disagree respectfully, or kind of have a good working relationship. And I would say that honestly, like, I've found that people are generally, you know, fine if you disagree respectfully. And that's a good way to not, you know, to preserve that relationship, even though great. But I also think that, you know, I think that there are a lot of people who are willing to be mentors to you, that if you I think if you're afraid to approach those people, it can hold you back. I think you shouldn't be afraid, and you should be willing to reach out, because every single time I've ever reached out to someone for mentorship, it's always been met in such a generous and amazing way that I would say that, you know, my instinct is always to just like try to do it on my own. But I've sort of had to get that out of my head and really actively try to ask people for help or for advice. And that's been really helpful. So I think, you know, don't be afraid to reach out is what I would say, and reach out as often. I would say, reach out often and regularly to people. A good way can be to like send a monthly email to someone and just kind of update them on your life and how things are going. You don't have to even ask for advice necessarily, but just having some regular communication, points of communication can be really helpful for preserving those relationships too.
I had to learn a few lessons in active mentorship, and I realized, one, I had to be active in that relationship. I spent most of my PhD in my lab waiting for my PI to come in and mentor me, realizing years later, even after I had finished my PhD, like, wait, I could have done it differently. And as I was walking out the door with my diploma and all of that, he said, "You're my first graduate student and you'll be my last graduate student." So I'm like, ouch, that hurt. But I realized I needed a lot more sort of managing up skills, and I was able to do that and try to be active. But I also realized throughout, and even nowadays, I need to sort of self-regulate as well, because I come in, I'm very excited about new ideas, but what about the things that we talked about 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, the things that I had promised about deliverables and all of that? So I have to follow up. I have to, sort of finish the thing that I promised to do, and that it's a two-way relationship. I need to meet them where they are, and I need to pull them along with me as well. But the other thing, the third lesson that I have learned, and this goes all the way back now to sort of childhood and reconciling me being an adult of, troublesome parents or whatever you want to call it, realizing that I don't have time for bad mentors. If someone is not going to give me what I need, or we can't work that relationship out, there's only so much time, effort, and energy that I'm going to commit to it, and then I'm out. So realizing that I don't need to have a relationship with everybody. I just need the relationships that are productive as much as possible. Again, I'm nice to everyone as much as possible, but the idea is like, not everyone needs to be my mentor. Not everyone needs to be my friend. And that's also the level of self-regulation. Like, I don't have to be friends with everybody, but I can be friendly with you. So those are a couple lessons that I've learned.
I'll do one real quick. I want to tell you that when I was a little kid, if somebody came over to our house, I would immediately go under my bed, and I was like frozen with fear. Like, I couldn't talk to people as a kid. I was like always on the periphery. We had blinds in our house, like looking at the party from the outside. And one day I actually kind of fell into a party because I was on the edge and something tripped me. And this man picked me up and he started to ask me a lot of questions. And I really realized quickly, like, the way to interact with people is just ask questions. And then if you get, and then you kind of have a ticket in. And so I became curious about people and asking questions. And that allowed me to kind of bridge my shyness and bridge making networks by learning about people and sharing. And then I had to learn to be a good listener to these questions. And just yesterday I was talking to somebody who reached out for some mentorship, somebody who was in an office nearby walked by and said, "Who are you talking to about Shakespeare, like in the middle of your workday?" And it was because this young woman had reached out, and she just couldn't get through. She was from a very poor background, and she was struggling. She really wanted to go to medical school, but she didn't do well in school, and she did okay with the MCAT, but she felt like she was just going to shoot for a 515. I'm like, "Why are you capping it?" She's like, "Because I can't get through this section. It's really hard." I'm like, "What's the section?" And she showed me, and I'm like, "Let's do a question. Let's do it right now." She's like, "Really?" So in the middle of the day, we pull up this question. I don't know anything about medical school. I mean, I didn't go to medical school, but I can do a question. So it was a New York Times essay on Shakespeare. And I said, "When you read this first paragraph, what's happening?" She had that same fear I had, lying onto the bed, just waiting for these people to go, like the just frozen. And so we started to read it together. And I thought, like, wow, this guy who wrote this essay really didn't like John Gielgud's, version of Hamlet, right? And so we started to joke around. And at the end of this, like, 1 hour just mentoring session, she said, "You know what? I didn't realize like reading that part, these things, this could be really fun. I could change it into learning. Even if I don't do well, I got something out of reading this essay, reading the questions first, like just kind of hacking the system in any way. So I think on the both sides, it's like being present as a mentor, being present as a person with yourself. What do you need as in your mentors, like you said, finding them, and don't waste your time with people who are mean. When people see you and they care about you, those are the people to spend time with.
Okay. Thank you.